there's no real answers coming. So I just thought, the heck with it. You know, I just have to get out of this. I want to go back to my life. My life stood for spirituality and nice people, and this is really awful stuff. I just don't want to look at it anymore. So I just went back to trying to live a spiritual life, to doing my meditation and my yoga and eating my health food, and I just didn't really want anything to do with this anymore. But again, that commitment that I made when I was about to kill myself really helped things come back to the forefront of focus. And I realized that I couldn't really, well, the essence of yourself as a spiritual person, the essence of a spiritual path is to know yourself deeply. How am I going to know myself deeply when I have this black box that I've shoved all this stuff in the back of my mind, but I don't open it or look at it anymore? I would bump into it all the time. So finally I realized that I had to go back, open that box up, and deal with the emotional fallout. And at that point, I had moved to Durango, Colorado, and found a really good healer to work with. I actually needed to fill in more hypnosis. I wanted to know what happened after the injection, and so I also found out about more abductions by grays, and all that information, which is also, I think, very important for other people who are contactees or experiencers. That will be in my book, which is called Facing the Shadow, Embracing the Light, and I hope to have that book out by June. But I'm talking about the military experiences today. So while I have this up, so after the injection and the military experiences, after the injection, that chemical went straight to the brain. I was drugged by 2 security guards down a very, very long flight of stairs through a different door. You know, we entered through one door into that little room, and we went down the stairs through another door. It was a nightmarishly long flight of stairs. I can only assume that it went underground. At the base of the stairs, there was a little room that I was unceremoniously dumped into, and the door locked behind me. It was empty. It had one light bulb up in the corner, and there was a one-way glass that was mirror on my side, and I looked at it, you know, kind of, I was shaking and going through the effects of the injection, but I noticed that there was that there, and I thought, they're watching me through that glass. And of course, I couldn't see them, and I went through the effects of that injection, and I was shaking so hard that I felt like I was going to literally shake apart. I just was shaking and shaking and shaking. And I laid on the floor of that little room with my arms wrapped around my knees to try to hold myself together. And for a good amount of the time that I was in there, I just screamed and screamed and screamed. And it was really, really horrible. So as if that wasn't horrible enough, as soon as the screaming subsided because the effects were wearing off, I was still shaking, I was dragged out of that room, and I was raped by the 2 security guards that pulled me down there. I do remember what they looked like. For some reason, I'm thinking I don't want to go into that right now. But 8 people were watching this happen. One of them was a gray alien, and I felt from him, maybe because of my abductions or my contacts, I was sensitive to their telepathy, but I felt him thinking, why on earth would these people treat one of their own in this fashion? You know, he just didn't really understand. So this is going on. I remember feeling completely and totally terrified and an equal measure of total enraged, totally enraged. And I remember that I was doing the disassociation because I didn't want to be in my body with what was happening. And so I memorized the sofa that it happened on. And I have a picture that I drew of that sofa on my table. And if you guys are interested, you can come and see that because I remembered it in great detail. because I didn't want to remember or be in my body with what was happening. So it's just a little hard to go on from here. Some of the other things that I remember were being walked around underground facilities, and again, complete transcripts are going to be in my book of my later hypnosis sessions. I actually did them with Gloria Hawker. And the session with Bud, I don't have the transcript because the tape quality was so bad, it was just about impossible to do any transcription from. So anyway, other experiences that I had beyond those, which were really quite enough to cope with, were of being walked around in the underground facilities. And I think I really need to do more hypnosis and try to piece together more of what happened. But dealing with what I've had to deal with has been so traumatic, I have not been anxious to go out and do more hypnosis sessions. It's because to a certain degree you re-experience what's happening to you in the hypnosis. So we were walked around in the underground facility at one point. We walked by an open doorway into what looked like a small laboratory. And in that laboratory there were some people, one of them was a woman, and there was a reptilian sitting in there. And that was really startling to see that. And then this is one thing that I brought up that I was going to say here at the UFO Congress, because I've never talked about this publicly or written about it publicly up to this point. And this is going to be fairly sensational information. And again, it needs more hypnosis and more study to find out more about what happened. But in my hypnosis memories, I remember being taken to the moon. I remember being put on a saucer. Melinda showed a picture of a saucer with feet down. And that was very, very similar to the saucer that I was put on. And I was with two guys. We were told to lay down on the floor. We were being transported like cargo. So we had to lay on the floor. The chairs were for more important people. So we laid on the floor. We were taken to the moon. And while I was there, I was worked very, very hard for the entire week that I was there. Hard work during the day and more sexual abuse at night with multiple people. And so the reason that nobody missed me for that week was because we went to Tonopah for a week at a time. People at Tonopah were told that I was sent back to Vegas because I was sick for that week. The people in Vegas thought she's up in Tonopah doing a regular weekly shift up there. So I was not missed for that whole week. But again, it's not the kind of thing you want to remember. You know, when I had the hypnosis with Bud, it was, rough enough to deal with. And I thought to myself, well, now what do I do with all this stuff in my head? I don't know what to do with it. How am I going to live a normal life? Knowing what I know. I mean, the whole idea of the United States of America I grew up in school learning about went up in smoke. That was just a complete sham. That was a farce. It didn't exist for me anymore. And I just thought, how am I going to do this? And you go to your friends and you try to talk to them. They don't want to hear about it. Oh, that's too scary. Are you sure you aren't mistaken? And you have this stuff rattling around your body. Are you sure you're not mistaken? Are you sure? And it's just like, well, I don't want to believe it either, but it's in here. It's in here. And so you try to live a normal life. You don't want to upset your family. You don't want to upset your friends. So you try to, plaster over it as best you can and go on. Well, it just doesn't work. I'm telling you, it just doesn't work. You've got to deal with this kind of thing once it comes out. And finally, I did find somebody I could work with to deal with it. And I remember thinking, just to lighten things up a little here, I thought to myself, if I start talking about this, the only career opportunity for me is going to be speaking out at UFO conferences. I'll be damned if that's going to be the only thing I do with my life, But here I am. So, the universe has a way, again, of prying your fingers away from everything you're trying to do to avoid your destiny until all you're left with is what you're supposed to be doing. So here I am. So, thanks. Okay, so I kind of have to move along here, I see, with my timer. This is kind of a case in point. You know, I found lots of intersecting testimony with my own from time to time, but this one is kind of notable. There's several points here. This is Above Black, Project Preserve Destiny, book by Dan Sherman, who was trained as an intuitive communicator because of his prior contact and adjustment by ETs while in the womb. Similarities, he was picked for this special duty because he was an abductee and had been adjusted by extraterrestrials in the womb. I have felt extremely strongly that my superiors knew this about me also, and that I was picked for the radar exercise because I was adjusted or hybridized, a child of both my parents, but with something extra added in. Sherman was forbidden to talk to his classmate in intuitive communicator school. And the interesting thing about my experiences on the radar site that night was we were given fatigues to wear with no rank insignia, no name tags, no identifying marks of any kind, and we were forbidden to speak to each other beyond what was necessary to run the test, effectively isolating us from each other. Sherman mentions that he has a little bit of Cherokee in his bloodline. I also have some Cherokee ancestry from my father's side of the family. That was actually partly in the choice of the color I wore today. Red, I think, is a warrior color, and I'm doing a warrior act here. And the blue, red in Native American tradition is for the red road that we walk in this life on earth, and blue is for the blue road of spirit. And I feel like I have a foot on both. So, thanks. So, how can such things even happen? What research uncovered is secrecy around extraterrestrial craft is just part of the puzzle. The world we think we live in is kind of a sham. I found out about Project Paperclip, Monarch, MK Ultra, a lot of it from Fred Burke's and team wanttoknow.info website and transformation team course. Highly classified black projects do exist. And it's the National Security Act of 1947 that makes all this possible because it creates a legal curtain of secrecy that you can't penetrate in a court of law or in usual inquiries because things are thrown out for reasons of national security. As sick as its secrets, the shadow government. In a world where more and more countries are releasing UFO files to the public, the U.S. is looking more and more like a holdout. The National Security Act of 1947 and all the criminal abuse that's gone on behind its curtain for reasons of national security is likely why the U.S. is dragging its feet on official disclosure. Just whose security are they protecting anyway? They certainly were not protecting my security. They certainly weren't protecting Melinda's. They certainly weren't protecting all the other people that are picked up and abused for mind control projects or black projects or any number of things that go on. I don't know whose security they're protecting anymore. It seems to me they're using this security to harm the very public and society that they are supposed to be protecting. So as far as I'm concerned, the National Security Act of 1947 must be abolished and all the information come out. And anything that applies to us as human individuals also applies to us as a human collective. And so if we want collective society and culture to have mental health, we have to have transparency in our world or it's just not going to happen. So another thing that we need to facilitate disclosure is a really well thought out amnesty program to protect people that have been trapped inside these projects through threats to themselves or their family or other means. False memory syndrome. I think this is really important. I'm just going to go ahead and read this. As we emerge into a world in which research in quantum sciences give working theories that support parallel research and findings in energy and mind-body medicine and healing, we learn that it's the power of our consciousness exercised through our minds that shapes and influences for good or ill both our reality and our biology. The human body is not simply a purely physical mechanism that can be tinkered with and altered at whim.